Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Coach Johnson returns to the show to speak about the program's playoff run, what the focus in the offseason will be, and who he's excited to bring up to varsity next season. We'll then be joined by Mingus Union High School baseball coach Erick Quesada. He'll break down the program's intriguing freshman catcher, how the program did in their early season tournament, and speaks about the knowledge on his coaching staff. And when we return from break, we'll be joined by Mingus Union High School softball coach John Brown. He'll speak about the program's preseason memorial tournament, how the first game of the regular season went, and previews the region. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Mingus Union High School softball coach. He is John Brown. Coach Brown, welcome onto the program.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Well, we're always happy to have you, Coach. The Marauders finished the 2021 season with a 17-2 record, an 11-1 record in the region, number 4 ranking in the state. They also won a region title and had a playoff appearance. Coach, in general, how did last season go for you?
Last season was great. I knew the girls would be talented and run deep in the season, and I think we made it as far as anybody expected us to, and fell just a hair short at the end. I think we ran out of steam, but we would have had a hard press to beat one of the other two schools in a championship. But we were close, and I think this year they've got an even better chance.
Coach, how did the offseason go? Were you guys able to welcome in any new freshmen or how any other new players make their way onto the roster in the offseason this year?
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a couple decide they didn't want to play that had played with us before, and they decided to pursue other interests. So we needed to reach out and get some kids. Mariana Lopez came back. She hadn't played in a couple of years, but she's a good athlete at Mingus, and she came back a couple of years off, and she's a senior. So the options are you play or you don't. And she's an asset to us as a base runner and a utility player in the outfield. And then we have a young up-and-comer, Sabrina Zunich. She's a freshman, extremely talented young athlete, very tenacious and hard-headed, and that's what we need. And, we want to bring a little bit of youth into it, and the girls get along with her great. She's got a role. She's a courtesy runner and a pinch hitter, and she knows her role and she accepts it, and she's contributed a lot already. So other than that, everybody else is a returning starter.
It's interesting. You add Mariana Lopez to the roster, basketball player. Last season, you had Yasmin Mestis serving in a very similar role. She's another basketball player. How do you have that conversation with those seniors about their roles when, their role doesn't necessarily include a lot of playing time?
Yeah, it's not always easy, but I found that the best way to do it is go straight to the point, explain to them what the opportunity is, and ask them if they want to be a part of it, and make sure they understand up front, and not just them, but their parents. Everybody on the team, everybody needs to know what the role is. And, sometimes in tournaments, there's opportunities to throw other things out their way, and that's great. But they know coming in what is expected of them and what their opportunity is, and they either accept it or they don't. Some don't. Ones that do generally have a good season with it.
The Marauders started off this season participating in the Faith Moore Memorial Softball Tournament against multiple teams, including region opponent Mojave and Prescott. I know, Coach, the passing of Faith Moore this offseason is still a very fresh wound in the softball team. I know we had our first game of the season against Cactus on Wednesday. Beautiful ceremony, retire her jersey to start off the year. I know this season and many seasons going forward are going to be dedicated to her, but I want to ask just specifically, Coach, how did you feel the tournament went? You guys had a great showing against Page, and then in Saturday, beating Sholo, struggled against Poston, but just in general, how did this tournament get this season going in the right foot?
Well, the reason we decided to run our own tournament to begin with years ago was to do a preseason tournament, something that we could all come together and get 4 or 5 games and work the glitches out before we start playing PowerPoint games. It's turned into a bigger event than it has been in the past, and I've got some great coaches that want the same thing. They want some preseason stuff, and they come out and they challenge each other. And then this year, of course, we had to change the vibe of the tournament and use it in a way to honor Faith, and that way we could kind of prolong it even after I graduate or retire, so that the tournament can live on and have a purpose besides just a preseason workout. Man, it was a good tournament. Everybody got a lot in, and we got to see some good competition and get a feel for where we're at more than anything. So.
Now, Coach, obviously, along with Mojave and Prescott, 2 teams you see in the 4A Grand Canyon region every single year. I know at one point Page was also a part of the 4A Grand Canyon region, so that can explain that relationship. But can you break us down a little bit of the teams that we saw outside of this particular area? You got Poston Butte, Mojave ALC, Sunny Slope, who ended up winning the tournament. How did you build those relationships throughout the years with the coaches of the teams that you don't get to see all the time? Even Northland Prep Academy got a chance to show out in that tournament.
Yeah, some of them actually reached out to us and just a general, hey, we heard you have a tournament and we're looking. But for the most part, the teams that are returning and have played in it before, I either know them from a club affiliation where we play during the summer and we know each other, or just in the past, we were reaching out and they decided to add our tournament and they like it. It's a little bit different format. We do some fun games in the middle that kind of eases the tension of normal playing woes at the beginning of the season, home run derbies and that kind of stuff. So we create an environment that we want them to come to, and these coaches from the big schools, they love it. And I get along great with those guys. They're good guys. They're extremely good coaches, and it's fun to have a camaraderie with them and try to play against them when we won't see them otherwise.
Again, we are speaking with Mingus Union High School softball coach John Brown. The Marauders kicked off their season this week with a win against Cactus. We'll talk to Coach Brown about that in just a little bit. Coach, you graduate 4 seniors last year. However, you mentioned it at the top. You returned basically the entire roster you had from last season, minus a couple names, of course, with those 4 seniors. You returned a solid group, of course, headlined by your senior pitcher in the circle, Alexis Erzman. Marissa Vaca returns this year, Mackenzie Figge, Ella Balo. Kiki Saravo is finding a little more time at third base. Cameron Jones has found a home in right field. I just want to ask, Coach, I guess more specifically about the group of seniors you have. We'll talk about the group coming up next season, but outside, of course, of a couple names that I mentioned, how are you feeling about this group of seniors you have this season?
Oh, these kids are solid. They've been playing for so long and been together for so long. So those are 2 features that you don't get a lot in high school ball. They've been playing since they were 8 or 9 years old on the same programs. And they're all very talented kids. They work hard and they get along. There's no drama or issues. And, last year, most of those kids you mentioned had some sort of accolade in the all regions and in all state. And so, it's super exciting to have a team come back that had a lot of success, but still have another year to do it. And they're hungry. They missed a year. And so kids missed their sophomore year. And so it was it was a curve last year to recover from that. And now they're just full steam ahead.
I want to take a look at the pitching rotation, Coach. Obviously, you'll have Alexis Erzman in the circle. You also have Marissa Vaca. I know Marissa's still kind of working back from that bicep injury she had. But Mikkel Gordon, who I know can pitch, it's been told to me multiple times, and she got a chance to pitch in that Faith Moore Memorial softball tournament against Page. She threw 4 innings, had a handful of strikeouts as well. How much confidence do you have in your staff going forward, knowing that now you can add officially Mikkel to that list of your available pitchers?
That's huge. I mean, pitching is everything in softball, and having some depth and some diversity in your pitching is just as important as having an ace that can dominate, because everybody has a bad day. There's always a chance for injury and fatigue. And we've got 2 or 3 weeks this year. We got 3 games in a week. Mm-hmm. And have the ability to get Alexis off the mound and put somebody else in there and still be very competitive and hang in there or even be dominant. That's huge. Not a lot of schools have that. And we're very, very fortunate to have that.
Like I had mentioned, of course, you return back junior Kiki Saravo, Sydney Stapleton, McKenna Watson, and Cameron Jones. They are players who found a little bit of time last season. Of course, third base was occupied by Mallory Copeland. You had a bit of a revolving door out in the outfield, minus a couple names. But I want to ask, all these players are seeing that extended time this season. How have they embraced their roles going forward now that they're, getting an opportunity a little bit more here this year?
Well, with having a tight group of girls that, we're only running 11 on our roster. So everybody's got a role in a position and they know it. So there isn't that, a little bit of an elephant in the room of who's on the lineup card this week or where am I going to play, So we really can specialize in practice on their position and what they need to do and how they cover each other. And so they're really learning the game within the game a lot. And the younger girls, the juniors, are eating it up because they've always been kind of on that fence. And now they've got a spot and they know it. Yes, they have to fight because they want to win, but they don't have to fight for their spot and focus on it. And they don't have to worry about not being in the game tomorrow.
Again, we were speaking with Mingus Union High School softball coach John Brown. Coach, you guys started off the season with a 7-0 victory against Cactus on Wednesday of this week. I just want to ask, how did you feel the team performed against Cactus? How did you feel? Alexis Erzman, of course, gives out a phenomenal performance, a one-hitter shutout for her. Cameron Jones added a couple base hits to her season this year. Excuse me. And McKenna Watson hit a big home run as well. So I just want to ask, Coach, how did you feel your team performed against Cactus on Wednesday?
I thought they did great. I mean, it would be easy to say, oh, wow, this team run ruled us last year. It took away our undefeated season, but they're not the same team. That was obvious when we played them. They're rebuilding and starting over. Their coach retired and they've got some, but we tend to play down to a level of a team if we're not careful. And they didn't do that yesterday. They definitely played their own game. They only scored 7 runs, but 7 runs is a lot of runs in a game of softball. And there was more dominance on the pitching level, obviously, but some of those hits, McKenna got a monkey off her back with that big struggling at the plate. Alexis had a day. I mean, it's overshadowed if you know more about the game than you should. But she, 17 strikeouts. That's a new school record. Destroyed the school record in regular inning games. And to do 17 in 7 innings is insane. And, she had a good day all around. She didn't do great at the plate, but she had a good day on the mound. And she was one batter away from a perfect game in a full 7-inning game. And that's something not a lot of girls do in high school ball. So, we look at that as, we had this, and we kind of look down when we really shouldn't. We got to realize that it was a victory all the way around, and we have something to walk away with to work on.
Well, Coach, obviously you start the season off on the right foot with that victory against Cactus. Next week, you guys take on Prescott to sort of start region play. I know the region teams are kind of more sprinkled throughout the schedule this year. So I want to ask, Coach, you guys hit the road against Prescott. How you feeling against the Badgers this season?
I feel like it's going to be a dogfight. Honestly, that group of girls has been playing together a long time, too. There's a little bit of a rivalry that has started between us in the last couple of years. It was us against them for the region championship, but because we beat them, they actually fell all the way back to third, I think. But either one of us won the region had we won that game. And that shows you how close it was last year, even though if you just look at the numbers, it wasn't there. But, I get along great with the coach. He and I are really good friends. But when we step on the field, it's me against you. And I intend to give it to him. So we'll see.
Coach, obviously, like I said, you're going to see a few more region opponents as we continue the rest of the season. How are you feeling about the rest of the region? I know you also got a chance to kind of look at Mojave. You didn't get a chance to play against them in that early season tournament, but how are you feeling about the rest of the region? Cocoa, Flagstaff, Bradshaw. I mean, who's really standing out this year for you?
The whole region itself is going to grow competitively. Last year, a lot of them were young, and a lot of them were kind of making some changes, and they were decent. And so this year, I expect them to be more comfortable and really pretty strong. Coconino is always good. The coach there is great at getting her kids together. Flagstaff's always got a tough team, and we did get to play Mojave in the Faith More tournament actually during pool. And they're struggling with pitching right now. Their pitcher got hurt before the tournament, so we didn't get to really see her. So it's hard to gauge off of that game what they're going to show. But you add that 4-hour drive into the mix, and it changes everything. So you never know, Mojave or Lee Williams. So, I think there's going to be some really good teams. Bradshaw's got a new coach. I hear they have some decent pitching. So I think it's going to be tough all the way through. It's not going to be a walk to the park.
Coach, I know that we just kicked off the season, but I want to ask, obviously your JV and freshman teams are going to be the ones coming up next season. How's the development looking down there at your lower levels? Were you guys able to add a few more freshmen and sophomores and who's and what's to the JV and freshman team?
Super excited. There were 28 kids that came out for the program this year, and I would say almost everybody except for the varsity squad were freshmen. It's insane the athletic ability that the school has right now in the freshman class. And I think, the girls, they picked 16 kids to play JV, which is a high number, but they're all athletic and they're all fighting for spots and playing time. And I think it's just going to pan out to be a really competitive team in the future if they can get some dominant pitching. They've got to work on their pitching, but I've never seen a group like that show up for tryouts. So that's very enlightening. It makes you look and go, okay, there is a future here.
Yeah, and it seems to be not necessarily a consensus, but a good handful of the coaches that I've talked to, of course, some at Mingus Union and some outside of the school as well, have said kind of the same thing, where they're welcoming in these really good classes of freshmen, and then they're turning into really good sophomores. And a lot of the talent is starting to find its way to some of these schools. And I agree. I know there's a lot of programs at Mingus Union, not just yours, that's welcoming in some more of those athletic freshmen and really, really could turn a couple programs around who have been struggling. But the Marauders, like I said, kicked off their season with a victory against Cactus. They get ready for their matchup against Prescott. That's coming up next week. On Tuesday, they'll be hitting the road, and then they'll be back to take on Estrella Foothills. So, Coach, I know we're at least a little under a week away from that game against Estrella Foothills, but what are you expecting in that one from them as well?
I don't know. Last year we went to them and they were great, but they weren't the toughest team that we had faced. And so I don't know if they've made any major changes, but I feel like we should be, pretty competitive in that game. We should be able to handle that. Depending on how Prescott goes, that it changes the mood if you struggle against a rival team. So, you're coming back and pitching the next day. These 3-game weeks are really tough on pitching staff. And so that's going to be something we have to figure out this week. We get to jump right into it because we have another game a day later. So it's a tough week for us.
How are you preparing your pitching staff for that long week, Coach? I mean, do you do anything extra in practice? Or are you giving some girls some extra reps in the circle?
Oh yeah, we're tough on them, and we knew this going in. We knew what we were up against, and we've been preparing for it since the summertime. And I just tell them to suck it up. It's time to get it.
Well, Coach, Mingus Union High School softball coach John Brown, like I said, the Mingus Union Marauders will head on the road to take on Prescott after getting a victory this week against Cactus High School, 7-0 victory. And then they'll take on Estrella Foothills on Wednesday. That is March 9th. So they'll hit the road on March 8th and then be back at home on March 9th. Coach Brown, thank you very much for taking the time, getting us caught up to speed on your softball team. I know we'll be covering it alongside with you, and we'll retouch base again as the season continues. But, sir, as usual, it's always great to talk with you.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate your support, man.
Of course. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. The Eagles put together a phenomenal season this year, and we'll get a chance to speak with Coach Johnson on the other side of this break. Stay with us. Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Coach Johnson, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Philip.
Well, we're very happy to have you, Coach. A successful season for the Eagles this year. They finished their season with a 16-2 overall record, going 12-0 in the region, earning them the number 5 ranking in the state, along with, of course, another region title for Coach Johnson and a trip to the playoffs, which included a trip to the state championship where they faced South Point Catholic. Coach, take us through the playoffs, and how did you feel the season went in total?
You know, in total, I thought that we had a real solid season. We started off the season losing the first game to Seton, and we lost that game by 4. So it kind of gave us a gauge of where we were right then and there as far as rankings among some of the top teams in the state. And so then after that, we were able to put together some nice wins. We won our Pepsi tournament. We went to Vegas and we won the Gator Winter Classic tournament. We played some quality teams there. And then we came up against Deer Valley and we lost that particular game. And, you know, even then we competed well, and Alyssa didn't play. Morning was just coming off an injury. Grace got in foul trouble. And so, you know, we knew that we were right there with the best teams in the state. And so going into playoffs, you know, we had ultimately hoped to be at least in the top 4 so we could potentially get 2 home games. Right. But being number 5, we got the first home game, and then Greenway pulled the upset. And so we got a second home game. Then Shadow Mountain pulled the upset. And so we got a third home game. And so it ended up being advantageous to us. You know, we love playing at home, and we got great support through the playoffs from the community and the fan base. And so it was good. And then even in the championship game, we had a lot of great support.
Yeah. Well, again, congratulations on another successful season, Coach Johnson. You graduate 6 seniors this year, headlined, of course, by Grace Lynez, who is one of the best players in the 4A. We'll talk about her just in a little bit. But along with Gracelyn, of course, Caitlin Davis, Adriana Williams, Jasmine Redhouse, and Brianna Curtis, your other seniors. Coach, what can you say about this group as they now make their way out of Flagstaff High School?
Well, you know, for this group, we have 2 of them being Jasmine and Caitlin that played varsity for 3 years. And so, you know, they've bought in, they've worked hard, and I was, you know, glad to see them ultimately get a chance to play in the state championship game. Then we had 2 that this was their first year on varsity. They had been around the program on our lower levels. And then Audrey, she had actually took a year off, and then I was glad to see that she came back and participated and got to, you know, be part of this team that ended up 29-3. And then Bree, she and Gracelyn both were on varsity as freshmen. And so, you know, for the program to come to this point during their tenure, I think it was great. You know, unfortunately, Bree got her Achilles injury over the summer, and so she didn't get to participate all year. We did get her in 1 game against Cocoa, but, you know, you just, for a kid like that, you had hope that she would be able to just really have her impact felt on the court by being able to play, but, you know, was big with her teammates and the support that she gave throughout the season. And then her commitment just to being there, even though she knows she wasn't playing. And then, of course, Gracelyn just, you know, coming in, like I've said several times, coming in to Flag High for volleyball, but ultimately having a chance to win a state championship in basketball before her career was done. I mean, it was great. It was good. It was a fun group, and I'm just glad for the success of those seniors.
Well, again, speaking specifically with Grace Lynez, obviously on the basketball court, she's been a fixture for your team for the past 4 years. You mentioned her success as well on the volleyball court for Coach Haglin as well. Graceland this season averaging 13 points in a record-setting year for her. She hit 1,000 career points in basketball and 1,000 kills in volleyball. So unfortunately, of course, didn't get that state title. But, Coach, what an impressive year and an impressive 4 years she's had at Flagstaff High School. I just want to ask, what has she meant to this program, and how has she inspired the kids coming up who are going to be looking to maybe break some of the records she set?
Well, I think just the way that she does things, it is role model-esque. I mean, she does the right thing. She works hard. She's a good student. She's a good person. And so, it's easy for her to be a good teammate because that's just part of her makeup and the fibers of who she is. And so, I think this year it was real big in the terms that she played a lot more basketball this spring and summer than what she had done throughout her high school career. And I think that in and of itself really helped us out in the long run, because even when we had some of our other players such as Sage and Alyssa and Morning, when they weren't playing with us in the spring and summer, when Graceland chose to play flag hoops. And so there were players like Joe, Jazz Redhouse, Caitlin, all them, they got to play and they got to, really see how Grace would lead and really buy in. And some of the players that were trying to make varsity got to see her, and just be there with her for more than the duration of the regular season. They had some summer months to build and grow and get to know her. And so just her commitment to flag high, her commitment to flag hoops when she decided to play summer basketball, her commitment to, our success was just huge. And so hopefully going forward, the returners saw that and, they'll want to emulate that. And then, like I say, if you come and you watch and you're a little kid hoping to play basketball, you look at it and see what Grace doing. One day you hope that you could do that as well.
I'm sure there are some future Eagles who are watching Graceland play against Coconino and a few of the other home games as well, looking and going, I really do want to be a part of this program as well because of how good Grace Lynez is. But a phenomenal talent attached with a bunch of other great seniors as well. Again, we're speaking with Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Eagles finished their season with a 16-2 overall record, going 12-0 in the region. They were also able to capture a region title along with a trip to the playoffs. Coach, I know you mentioned a few of your returners. Sage Begay, the second leading scorer, she'll be back next season for her senior year. But who else are you looking forward to returning next year from the roster on the varsity this season?
Well, I'm looking forward to all of them returning. We actually had 5 sophomores and we had 2 freshmen, but we finished with 1 freshman. So underclassmen, we had 6. And so, of course, Sage is going to be an integral part coming back for her senior year. But, when you look at our sophomores, you got Alyssa Harris, who's she's just a phenomenal talent. The way that she works in practice, I mean, her work ethic, she gets after it. It's second to none. And so, there's just things that she does that you realize that she's a special athlete. Morning Honani, same, her understanding of the game and the flow that she plays with is going to be huge. Continue to build her confidence and really allow her to blossom into her junior year. And then we had the Dugas sisters as sophomores that came off the bench, and that enabled us not to have any drop off. I mean, I think that they could have, played at other schools and probably started and really helped other schools out. And the fact that, they accepted their role, they worked hard when they got in, they came off the bench, it just made us better. We had Kenya Bly, who was a sophomore as well. And, there were points during the season where she really came on and, you can tell that, okay, she's getting an understanding of how to play at this level. And so she's going to be big for us. And then, of course, Tegan Martin, she got good minutes as a freshman, really got to see what the varsity speed is, pace is, strength is. And so, hopefully she'll work on her shot, work on her strength, and then just really make a big push to come back. And then, we, of course, our other juniors, we had Bridget Nichols, we had Shondine Lancaster, and who knows if I'm going to get chastised for missing somebody, but but I'm just looking forward to the whole team coming back because I think we got quality players up and down the roster.
Yeah, what I'll do, Coach, is I'll put in a list of the rest of your players that weren't mentioned so that everyone gets that mention and feels belong. But no, seriously, you got a great program coming back next season. We're going to talk about the JV and freshman programs. They also played very well this year. But real quick, Coach, I want to ask, obviously you can't teach experience. So how much does this playoff experience help those? You mentioned having a freshman on the roster this season. Obviously, you're going to be returning back some seniors who have, been in the mix for a couple of years now. But how much does that playoff experience help your underclassmen going forward in their career at Flagstaff High School?
Well, I hope it'll be a tremendous eye-opener to them, when we establish goals to be in the top 4. Now with the open division coming and all that good stuff, we want to make sure that we're strong as we can be and that we're ready. And then irregardless, we want to be able to host home games. We played well on the road. We played well on neutral course this year. But I think if we get people up in elevation and we can play our type game, that's to our advantage. And so why not? And so hopefully they'll really understand that and don't wait until the season to work. Hopefully their work is starting now for the return to the state championship game again, and then ultimately end with different results. And so hopefully it just inspires them to really get out and work and really say, you know what, I like that. I want to get back.
Yeah, and that's obviously the goal every season. A program like yours, Coach, you guys are constantly in the playoffs. Like you said, that open division coming up is going to open a lot of things up for your program in the playoffs. Looking forward, continuing our look forward, JV and freshman programs, phenomenal seasons again this year. I want to ask, what does a strong lower level season mean for the program going forward?
Well, what it means is that I got to do a better job coaching because both of them is undefeated, and so I'm the only one that got losses in the program. So, but no, seriously, Coach Janie, she does a great job with the freshman girls. She's been undefeated the last 2 seasons, and then they come up to Coach Neal, and he starts trying to really get them ready for the intensity and pace and speed and expectations at the varsity level. And he did a great job with the program this year as that group went undefeated. And so for us, I just think making sure that, the freshman team knows, the JV team knows, and the varsity team knows that, they're all equally important. It's not just for us, it's just not all about the varsity, everything go to the varsity, this, that, and the other. Of course, there's going to be some perks and amenities to have them strive to want to get to varsity, but we want them to know that, everything you're doing on the freshman level is important to our program success. Everything you do on JV is important to our program success. And so when they do go through the system and they get up to varsity, we can just keep it going. And it's not like whole bunch of, rebuild it and say, okay, get used to this. It's going, it's just like, hey, here's the expectations. You know how it's going to work. Let's get in, let's get it done. And so my freshman and JV coaches and their staff, they do a phenomenal job at teaching these girls and getting them to work and getting them to understand our expectations.
Again, we're speaking with Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Coach, one last question for you here. What's the plan for the offseason? Are you one of those coaches who likes to get your team involved in off-season tournaments quickly? Are you kind of giving them a little bit of time off? I know a few girls are probably, playing other sports in the spring. But I want to ask, what is your plan for the off-season and where would you like to see this team improve in before we get to next season?
Well, for us, Coach Neal, our JV coach, he already ready to go. We do a program, Flagstaff Hoops, and so there's a parent meeting this coming Sunday, and so he's raring to go. I'm not going to do anything till after probably spring break, and so for us, we do flag hoops. A lot of the girls that play for us, they play in flag hoops, but we get kids from, we'll get kids from Tuba City. We've gotten kids from New Mexico. We'll get kids from, just Winslow, Williams, et cetera. And so that's typically what we do. And then in June, we'll play together as a unit as far as Flag High School. And then I think the more girls that play with us, the better it's going to be. My big expectations is to be just improve as an individual, and we got to get stronger. We got to start looking like some, D1 athletes like the girls that we play against. And so that's going to be big for us this year, making sure we hit some weights and get stronger.
He is Flagstaff High School girls basketball coach Tyrone Johnson. Coach Johnson, thank you very much for taking the time.
I appreciate you, Philip.
Of course, sir. Best of luck on the season next year. We are going to continue our conversations here as we move into our next interview with Mingus Union High School baseball coach Erick Quesada. Stay with us here on Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Mingus Union baseball coach Erick Quesada. Coach Quesada, welcome back onto the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Phil. Appreciate it.
Well, it's always great to talk with you, Coach. The Marauders finished the 2021 season with a 7-12 record and a 4-8 record in region. Coach, coming into 2022, I want to get your thoughts on last season's performance. Where did the team grow, and how are you carrying that momentum into this year?
I think we learned a lot about ourselves last year. I think, there's a lot of games that didn't go necessarily our way. I think we had a couple of games that were one run, and then a couple of games that just slipped out of our hands, I feel like. I think that leading into this year, we have a really good core group of guys, a lot of senior leadership that have been with us in the program the whole entire time, which is nice. So I think, having a different, mindset, like a growth mindset of wanting to, change the tide, change everything about how last year went and stuff like that. It's really going to help us. But yeah, I mean, you hear a 7-12 record, below 500. That's nothing, to brag about or, be excited about, but it's something to definitely, look back on and improve on. I think that's what the boys definitely want to do this year.
Coach, I want to talk briefly about the 6 seniors you did graduate last year. I believe one of them is currently playing over at Yavapai College. What else can you say about that senior class that graduated last year?
Yeah, that was a really, really talented senior class. Trey Peters, he's actually at Chandler Gilbert Community College. He's pitching there. He is actually the first one out of their bullpen. He's doing a tremendous job. He's already, logged a lot of innings this year for Chandler Gilbert, which is fantastic. That senior class, so it was a very emotional, class as well, because they had put so much time and effort into everything. And, some of them are still around town and they stop by the field and whatnot. And so it's, I like to think of our program as a family, and they definitely left the program in a much better place than they got it. So I think that's all you can ask for as a coach. Well,
Coach, we transition through the rest. I mean, let's talk about the off season. How did the off season go? Did you guys participate in any tournaments? How were the numbers? Any new faces we should be excited about? Welcoming in a big class of freshmen, I hope. I mean, how'd the off season go for you?
It was, this was my first year not really having too much involvement with football. So that definitely opened up my schedule some more. We were actually began practice in August. So that's been, this is my 5th year here. And that is the first time we've actually fully been, 3 times a week since August. We were in the weight room, busting their tails. We had multiple games in the fall. So it was really nice to, get my hands on them early. Numbers were really nice. We had consistently, I think, 25 kids. And that's, between, football, and then, some were swimmers, and then you go into, basketball, especially we have a lot of basketball players, but we average a good amount of numbers. This year, unfortunately, we have, I think, 7-8 freshmen, which is the least that we've had. Yeah. Last year we had, I believe, 22 freshmen, which is astounding. But Mingus is not the only one that is low on freshmen. I know surrounding schools, they also do not have a straight freshman team this year. Some Phoenix schools, same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely, I think the times, I think COVID's played a role. I think just, different things of mindset wise. But it's the life we live, and we just got to move forward with who we have and go from there. But we have a lot of new faces. We have a freshman catcher who's going to be with us on varsity this year. We have a couple sophomores who are going to be bouncing up and down varsity and JV. But we just have a lot of competition, which is a really good thing to have. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it shapes out.
Well, Coach, I don't want to get too deep into the player the position competitions just yet, but you talk about that freshman catcher. You've obviously welcoming back your senior catcher, Zach Harrison. So I want to ask, are these two guys going to be splitting time behind the plate this year? Are we going to see Zach in a different position? Are we going to see Zach behind the plate until he gives you a reason not to use him? I mean, what's in terms of that competition? Where are you at with that matchup?
Oh, it's great. Zach has done nothing wrong at that position. He was second team all region catcher. I mean, so he it's not necessarily the fact of, what has he not done? It's what he has done. He's done great for our program. But, you also have to look forward to the future as well and understand, what's ahead for the next couple of years. And so Zach and Xavier is his name. They're going to be platooning back and forth. And, they both understand their roles and both understand, for the betterment of the team, stuff like that. So, Zach is, fully on board, and he understands, the whole team aspect. And he's going to get plenty of innings and plenty of games behind the dish as well, to, alleviate some of the stress from Xavier. So it's going to all work out in the end. I truly believe. And, like I said, is when you have two guys who buy into it, it works out good.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, Coach. I mean, obviously, Zach Harrison, also the captain quarterback for the football team as well. A guy who it's nice to hear he's welcoming in that role and having a little competition in his senior year. And hopefully that will breed a little more for Xavier, your new freshman catcher, to give him a little bit of friendly competition with a veteran like Zach Harrison, a guy who's got a lot of leadership, a guy who's got a lot of knowledge about the position and being in the program for so long, welcoming in this new guy. It's going to be a lot of fun, Coach, to see those two battle it out this year, especially when we get a chance to see some actual games. Again, Mingus has got their first game on Wednesday. We're talking to Coach Quesada a little bit before then. They'll be taking on Cactus by the time you guys hear this particular episode. But the Marauders will then take on Prescott. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But, Coach, you start off the 2022 season with a tournament. You get a chance to travel down to the Wayne DeCombs preseason Westside Invitational. In that tournament, you face Tolleson Union, Verrado, and Deer Valley. More specifically, Coach, how did the tournament go, and what did it tell you about the team this year?
The tournament, we definitely took our lumps. You look at those schools, Tolleson, they're, 6A school, Verrado, they're a 5A school. Our last consolation game, we played Apollo, they're a 5A school. And then we played Deer Valley. We played, I think, well, not, necessarily great, but that's stuff that, that's why you have preseason tournaments. The games mean nothing in the sense of wins or losses. It's just improvement. I think that we have a lot of question marks, but good question marks. Can we put this here? Will this work here? Which is things that you want going into the season. But, facing really good competition, you're facing multiple guys who are, two teams who have multiple Division I guys. I mean, it's a humbling experience for our boys to see, what's out there. We're in this little bowl of Verde Valley, but a lot of Phoenix schools, they have, so many, so much talent. And that's not saying we don't. It's just saying that, they are just, more developed, so to speak. And that's okay. I mean, we know who we are, and we know that's what we will do. But the Wayne DeCombe tournament, it's a great tournament. It's very relaxed, but also competitive, which is what you want. And I think our boys ate a couple slices of humble pie, just in a good way to see where we're at, what we need to improve on, which is, I think, ultimately what we all wanted to see at the end of it.
Coach, did you have any standouts during that tournament? Anybody play particularly well that you'd like to throw out there?
Yeah, we had Anthony Rivera, our center fielder, he was dialed in. The first night, the first opening game, we saw a right-handed pitcher throwing 86, 87 miles an hour, which is, really, really nice for a varsity level pitcher. Anthony, hit a triple in the gap off of him, on time. Everything looked good. Pitching, Ryan Schamberger did a really good job against Deer Valley. I believe he went 5 2/3 of an inning, gave up 2 runs. Offensively, couldn't really get it going, but it's baseball. Jan Alvarez stood out. Zach Harrison stood out. Zach Harrison actually hit our first home run of the season against Deer Valley, an absolute rocket to right field. There's you could pick and choose. Hunter Kogel, who's going to be our number 3 this year. He did really good job against Tolleson. But I think it was really all trying to see how everything's going to, play and match up. And I think, as you start, piecing everything together, which the coaching staff has done, it's all going to come together to fruition in a good, positive way. And, leaving that tournament, frustration as a competitor, obviously not getting wins.
Right.
But as a coach, you see the writing on the wall, what could be a great season. And I think the boys see that as well.
Coach, I think that's a great point. I mean, like you said, obviously the tournament games don't necessarily count for or against you, but this is a great opportunity for just your guys who aren't playing that club ball to get an opportunity to see some live pitching. Like you said, Deer Valley had a guy who was throwing 86, 87, not something we see typically here in northern Arizona. I know that Flagstaff had a kid who was pumping about 90 last year, but it's like you said, it's just good for competition. It's good for these guys. Even though you guys struggle in the tournament, it's good for these guys to get an opportunity and start building that confidence early on. You talk about Rivera getting a triple. That's a good confidence booster for him going into the season. Zach Harrison hitting an absolute tank into right field. Another, it's just like you said, it's just a great sort of early look at what could be a very, very successful season for Mingus Union High School on the baseball field.
Yes.
But Coach, you mentioned your pitching rotation. Obviously, you just mentioned Jan Alvarez. He'll be back. 3 wins last year, 4.78 ERA, led the team in earned run average. Like you mentioned, Sham's back, Ryan Schamberger. I'm sure he's going to be splitting time again at first and with the pitching mound. Isaiah Godina, another guy who's a sophomore this year. He was in the rotation. He's mixed in a little bit. I'm not sure where he fits in the fold here. Have you kind of catch us at the speed there? And like you mentioned, junior Hunter Kogel as well. So, Coach, I just want to ask, who else could we see a part of this rotation? How are you approaching the rotation this year? And what are you expecting from this core of guys in a couple of their final years here at Mingus?
Yeah, the pitching staff has always been a question mark for us, just because, smaller school, you have to have a lot of two-way guys. But this year I feel, knock on wood, I feel really confident in the guys that we have that are going to, give us a really good chance to win some ball games. Like you mentioned, we have Schamberger, you have Alvarez, and you have Hunter, and then you have Pops or Godina. Then we have David Rodriguez. He's come out. He's doing a really good job as a sophomore. Put him in some tough spots this tournament, but he's got to learn, that, and that's what he gets. You also, sorry, that's our lunch bell. You also add in, Eduardo Carrasco. He'll eat up a couple innings for us. Anthony Rivera. I can go on and on of guys who can, split some time and help. Xavier, he's also a guy that can pitch. We have Zach Harrison. We've groomed him to pitch. We have our core guys who we know who can compete, but we also have guys who know they can eat up innings and know their role. So I think that's a very positive for us, a big positive for us, excuse me.
You talk a lot about utilizing David Rodriguez in some of those high leverage situations early on this season. I mean, is that what you like to do with your younger pitchers when you giving them those opportunities early on to work out of those jams, to come into very heavy situations? I think David came in last year to try to get out of a bases loaded jam?
It was a bases loaded. Yeah. So it's a lot of trial by fire, but mostly us coaches, we want to see how you compete, at the end of the day, like in tournaments such as ones that really, like I said, don't matter. It's now 0-0 to begin our season tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Can they compete? How is their body language? This body language is a big thing. Like, I know you don't want to necessarily, be that guy, but are you one that's going to be upset that you gave up runs, or are you going to be one that's going to pout? There's a big difference. Ones that, feel you let your team down, or feels that you let yourself down, big difference there too. But those younger guys, I think they've bought into our standard of, for the team, doing what we can for the team, and really just seeing how you could compete. If you could compete, we could work with it. But if you're just going to fold, what's that going to say about you? You know what I mean? It's just stuff that you have to be able to pinpoint and say, I need to be better at this. I need to be better at this. How can I be better? And then us have as a staff telling them what we can do. So I think it's, putting those sophomores in positions like that, it gets them where they need to go mentally, but also, physically as well.
I like that, Coach. Obviously, you're just trying to build confidence in these guys. And like you said, you get a guy like David Rodriguez, like I said, last year, comes into a high leverage situation, is able to work his way out of it. And that gives him confidence going forward for lesser situations, like when he's starting a game or if it's the top of the inning, Right. So it's like you said, it's just preparing these guys for the season. You guys have expectations. They have expectations as well. And we're excited for the start of the year, Coach. Again, the Marauders are taking on Cactus High School on Wednesday. Then they'll have a game on March 8th against Prescott, which will start their region play. We'll have some coverage for that Prescott game for you as well. Coach, I want to ask you, who else are you excited to see back out on the field this year? I know Emmett Smith was a guy you guys had last year. I know he got hurt during football season, so not sure where he's at in terms of recovery. But Ben Balo is another guy who played some time last year as well. Just up and down the board, Coach. I mean, who else are you looking forward to bringing back? We have Ben is a big one. Once again, he was a freshman last year on varsity. That's a big task. He had a good tournament. Then we also are bringing on Angela Alvarez. He will be helping us a little bit. Pretty much like Jonathan Sanchez did last year. It is what it is, right? You got guys who could compete. Like a Johnny, he's like a kid who hadn't played in a while, but he was a bulldog. He wanted the competition. He wanted that, and you add Angela to the mix, who's someone just like that, which is the definition of a bulldog, Coach. Right. The kid plays 2 games of football on no ankle, right? I mean, that's someone that you want on your team, for sure. But I think overall, truth be told, is we have a good collective group, and it's really exciting. Every Sunday I sit back and think about the week ahead, and there's a lot of positives heading into the season, heading into this week, heading into next week, and you just piece it all together. And if we stay healthy, we keep our grades up, I think we can have a really great season. And mostly if the boys just have fun, play loose, and just enjoy the game that we love, I think we'll be in a really good spot heading into May. Coach, I want to talk about the JV team. Obviously, we mentioned a few freshmen who made their way up to varsity this year. I want to specifically ask about your coaches down there. I mean, first and foremost, of course, who might you be bringing up from JV? And then also, how have your coaches been able to help with the development aspect of those lower levels for the varsity program? Yeah, you're only as good as your assistant coaches. And what I think that we take a lot of pride in is, we just don't want, let me backtrack, in a small town, it's tough to get coaches. I mean, it truly is. But you don't want just a coach at a younger level that's just a warm body, so to speak, that just is there just to fill in, even though their intentions are all for the right reasons. Don't get me wrong. You want someone that's going to develop these kids in the proper manner, and one that it's a good positive role model. Last year, Carlos Godina, he was our freshman coach. He's a police officer. That's upstanding citizen right there. Oh, yeah. That's something that you want to lead a program. He's actually moved up to the JV position because Miguel Gonzalez, our JV coach, stepped down just for personal reasons, which is great because they're great personal reasons. Mm-hmm. So Carlos has stepped into that role. We have Ross Kogel, who is the twins' dad, who's also a great man, great coach. We have Lewis Newell, who's now with the Frosh Soft team with Carlos, who's helping that out. He's a firefighter. Once again, another person of respect. You have Jeremy Peters, my assistant coach, who's a pastor. And then you have my assistants at the top, Coach Houston, who's been in the game of baseball for roughly over 30-40 years, and then also John Balo as well, same thing, 30-40 years. And those guys are just people that have high character, who the kids look up to. And at the end of the day, we want good people. Baseball ends for all of us, or sports end for all of us, but you want people that you can look up to. And I believe having
a police officer, a firefighter, a pastor, and, men of high quality who have been in high school programs for 30 years. What's not to love about that, and what's not to respect about that? So it's a great thing. And I know that we take a lot of pride in that.
Well, Coach, just real quick, I finally got a chance to speak with Coach Balo last season for just a couple minutes, having heard his reputation and heard that he's been with the program for so long. And I'll tell you what, if you want a really productive conversation about baseball, you sit down with John Balo and you talk about some stuff going on the diamond, because he is extremely knowledgeable, and it was a fantastic conversation. So, Coach, just real quick, you got Cactus coming up, which will follow with Prescott. More specifically, what are you expecting from the Cobras?
They're going to play us tough. They actually have their first game today. They open up against ALA Queen Creek, which is also one of our opponents this year. And a lot of my time, truth be told, goes into scouting and understanding what we're looking forward to. A lot of my time in between, my lunch hour, my prep hour,
right,
outside of school is, looking on max preps, evaluating, see when I can to try to get, an edge on my opponent. I think Cactus is going to, play us tough. And then looking forward to, Prescott. I mean, when you go into region play, all holds bar. I think any coach in the region could agree with that.
Yeah.
Prescott's going to be a big question mark. They're well coached because they have a new coach.
Coach Tolley.
Coach Tolley. I had the, privilege to meet him, this past May, when he took over in, the Memorial Day tournament. Very high tempo kind of guy, really great guy. Saw him in football again. So I'm looking forward to many years competing against him. And I know that, off his track record, he's going to have them, not missing a beat from what Coach Winslow had. So the region is going to be tough. It always is. Grand Canyon region should never get a knock, because we usually send, 5 teams to the play-in tournament, to the state tournament. So it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Coach Tolley is a lot of fun. I got a chance to talk with him as when he accepted the position last season. And I'll tell you what, he's an absolute wild card. The guy's got energy coming out of areas I don't even want to know. But
right.
I know Coach Tolley's excited about his season with Prescott. I know, Coach, you're excited with your team, the Mingus Union Marauders. Like I said, region play will start not this week, but next week against Prescott. The Marauders, at the time of this interview, will wrap up their game against Cactus. Coach Quesada, I want to wish you the best of luck. I know we'll be seeing each other throughout the season as we cover baseball. But Coach, should be a fun year, and I'm looking forward to being right there and watching this team along with you. So best of luck.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. And I thank you guys for all the support for, our program and Mingus Athletics for sure. It's a privilege for those boys to, have their games broadcasted. And I think that they definitely appreciate it. So thank you guys.
Of course, Coach. We're going to actually, that's going to be the end of the show. Want to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll see you again next time.